To talk more about what can Russia and China do in terms of aiding and helping Iran, we spoke about the calculations that both of them have and which could limit their stakes in this entire region. But nevertheless, they want to continue with that optics, or at least Iran would want. What are those options? Let's get Michael Feller and Fred Weir to talk more on that. Michael Feller is a co-founder and chief strategist of Geopolitical Strategy. I believe that's a think tank that he runs. And Fred Weir is a senior journalist joining us from Russia. And in fact, Fred, let me start with you. We've spoken about and we've told our viewers what really are the moving parts to the entire Russia-Iran-China relationship. Help us understand, how does Kremlin view this particular scenario? Will Russia back Iran, and does that include a military backing as well?
Well, I think you summarized it very well back there. The main thing to keep in mind is, as alarmed as the Russians are, and they are very much so at the moment, their alliance, their strategic partnership with Iran does not include a military component. That's different from its relationship, for instance, with North Korea, which does have a mutual defense clause, which has already been activated. The North Koreans sent troops to Kursk region to fight the Ukrainians just this last few months. So Iran, there's nothing of that kind with Iran, and the United States, as far as Russia is concerned, can have a free hand, I think, in Iran. The last thing that Russia wants is a war with the United States or even Israel. So that said, Russia has a lot of stakes in Iran. They had been developing economic ties, rather deep ones, oil and gas, infrastructure, that north-south transport corridor, which Russia is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into building a railway to connect Indian Ocean ports with the Russian railway network. All that is in danger of being unraveled by this war, especially if there's regime change or national disintegration in Iran. Another thing that I think needs to be stressed here is the levels of duplicity that were involved, the lies that Donald Trump told, especially about peace talk. Twice Iran was subjected to this, having peace talks dangled before them and then hit. Well, this will reverberate in Moscow, where Donald Trump has been posing as peacemaker between Russia and Ukraine. Nobody is going to believe a word out of his mouth anymore.
Okay. Michael Feller, then let me ask you this in terms of the meeting that Iranian Foreign Minister and Vladimir Putin, that all-important meeting. In your assessment, what could be the big takeaway or highlight of it? Do you think just optics, showcasing of support with anything backing that? Or do you think there could be something more than that? I believe, Michael Feller, my voice is not reaching you. Okay, we'll collect that in just a bit. Fred, then let me ask you this. In terms of your expectations from a meeting like that, it's high profile, but would it just be all about optics, showcasing support, maybe speaking a little bit about it? Or do you actually expect something more than that could be there? Because, you know, for Vladimir Putin also, there's a lot at stake. At the end of the day, Russia is a big stakeholder in the region. It wants to be seen as a big stakeholder there.
I think that there's very little Russia can do materially to help Iran. They may want to, but as I said, they have the ability to ship arms to Iran, but across the Caspian Sea. But at this point, I don't see how much help that would be, even if the Russians did. But I think their biggest fear is, as it should be, is World War III. There is a real danger here of this thing blowing up into something much, much worse. That this is the way big conflagrations get started.
Okay. That's an important point. Let's put that across to Michael Feller, whom I believe can now hear me. Mr. Feller, as Mr. Fred is saying here, that there is a real possibility of World War III happening. What do you think Russia and China are going to be doing there? Till now, they've come out with some solidarity, some show of support and solidarity, nothing more. Do you expect anything more? And particularly from China?
Yeah, it's been a show of hopes and prayers, but little else. I think that Russia put its cards on the table when Vladimir Putin said on the weekend that in some ways he considers Israel part of the Russian sphere because it has 2 to 3 million Russian speakers. So as absurd as that may sound to many, that's his way of saying that he's probably not going to provide much more material support for Iran. The thing with Iran, Russia and China is that this was at best an access of convenience, but it wasn't a real alliance. And you only need to look at Russian history to see that for most of its history with Persia and later Iran, they've been enemies. And if it weren't for mutual hostility to the United States, which is changing under Donald Trump, at least from the perspective of the Kremlin, if it weren't for that mutual hostility, there's not really much to go on.
So, Mr. Feller, then it also means that if there is nothing substantial that comes by way of more than just strongly worded statements from China and Russia, then it also means that it impacts their relationship with America with regards to the Middle East, doesn't it?
Yes, but they're going to prioritise their relationship with other Gulf countries. Saudi Arabia is far more important than Iran to both Russia and China, so is United Arab Emirates. They're not going to jeopardise those relationships for the sake of Iran or I think, tolerate a blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. And certainly they're not going to waste their valuable firepower on defending Iran when respectively they have wars in process in Ukraine and wars potentially going to happen in the future, though I hope not, in Taiwan.
So then what is the basis, Mr. Feller? This is a question I asked to both of you. Mr. Feller, to you first, and then Mr. Fred, to you, which is that then if nobody, not even your traditional allies, are going to come and back you up, I'm not mentioning North Korea because that's the only fourth member of this quartet, but the traditional allies of Iran, if they're not going to come and back it when it's making threats like blocking of Strait of Hormuz, then can we safely assume those are just empty threats? And how do you then perceive Tehran to actually escalate this further, apart from the hawkish commentary that's just coming in? Do you think there's going to be something more than that?
It actually makes Iran more dangerous, in my view, because their back's against the wall, and they'll have less interlocutors to talk them down from the ledge, so to speak. You only need to look at the 1980s when Iran fought against Iraq, and both the Soviet Union and the United States essentially supported Iraq in that war. And it was only Israel, clandestine, in terms of clandestine aid, that was supporting Iran, ironically. But Iran showed it had grit and it was willing to fight with civilians on bicycles and all sorts of horrible things for 8 long years. So I don't think, Iran is a big country. I don't think this will necessarily deter Iran. It may change their calculus, it may change which approach they take. But from my perspective, the regime, its back's against the wall, it has no good options. It faces a dilemma. Does it take regime change externally imposed on it from the United States, or does it risk regime change internally if it does nothing?
All right, I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global.